You know how it is, right? You're scrolling through your feed and suddenly you see this headline that just stops you in your tracks. It makes you question something you eat all the time. Well, today, we're diving deep into one of those exact scares. The viral claim that a simple slice of processed cheese, the kind you find on a burger, could be seriously bad for your health. So, is there any truth to this? Let's get into it.
So this was the big, scary question that was flying all over the internet. I mean, kidney failure? Bone loss? From a slice of cheese? The claim was that this stuff was so loaded with phosphate that it was basically toxic. It sounds really specific, and yeah, it sounds pretty terrifying. But is it real? We're going to break down exactly where this whole idea came from and see if it actually holds any water.
All right, to really get this, we have to rewind and look at the source. And believe it or not, this whole panic started with a single, super dramatic segment on a TV news report. They called it the Fatal Minute. And honestly, it was designed to do one thing: grab your attention and scare you in just 60 seconds.
And we're not talking about some long, in-depth documentary here. Nope. The entire basis for this massive health scare was a 1-minute experiment they did right there on the show. They presented it like it was this huge expose, a quick test that was going to blow the lid off a hidden danger in our food. Okay, so what did they actually do? Well, the experiment itself looked pretty straightforward on TV. They took a tiny 1-gram piece of cheese. Then they used what they called a professional test strip to check for phosphate. And finally, they had an expert on hand to announce the results. It all seemed very official, very scientific. But this is where things start to get interesting.
And here it is, the bombshell. The expert on the show announced that their test found over 500 milligrams of phosphate in that tiny 1-gram sample. Now think about that. They said a full slice is 20 grams, so they imply that a single slice of cheese would have more than 10,000 milligrams of phosphate. That was the number that sent everyone into a panic.
Whoa, okay, a number like that definitely makes you sit up and listen. But this is exactly where we need to hit the pause button and put on our critical thinking hats, just like Professor Lin did when he first saw this. Because when you really look at that number, it doesn't just seem a little high. It seems completely physically impossible.
So let's break this down because this is the key. A gram is just 1,000 milligrams. So if a 1-gram piece of cheese has more than 500 milligrams of phosphate, that would mean that over half of the cheese itself is pure phosphate. Forget the milk, the protein, the fat. The claim is that more than half of it is just this one chemical. It just doesn't make any sense.
And really, this question from Professor Lin just says it all, doesn't it? It completely cuts through all the noise and the fear-mongering. Are we eating cheese, or are we eating phosphate? When you put it that way, you can instantly see how absurd the TV show's claim really was. It fails the most basic reality check.
Okay, so if the number is basically impossible, then something must have gone seriously wrong in their experiment. So the big question is, what happened? How did a test that looked so professional on camera lead to a result that was so incredibly, wildly off the mark?
And it all boils down to this one simple but absolutely critical mistake. It's all about the units of measurement. See, the test strip they used, it measures concentration in a liquid, in milligrams per liter. But the expert on the show announced the result as if it were milligrams per gram, a measure of solid weight. That's kind of like confusing miles per hour with just miles. They sound alike, but they measure completely different things. It's a fundamental error.
All right, so now that we've seen how they messed up the experiment, let's look at the actual facts. How much phosphorus is really in a slice of this cheese? And just so we're clear, nutritional labels list the element phosphorus, which is the key part of the phosphate compound. So let's look at the real numbers, shall we? Wow, I mean, just look at that difference. It is absolutely staggering. The TV show, with its bad math, came up with a number over 10,000 milligrams a slice. But the reality, according to actual nutritional data, a 20-gram slice has around 36 milligrams of phosphorus. Not 10,000, 36. It's not even in the same ballpark.
And this is where putting things in perspective is so important. For most adults, the safe upper limit for phosphorus in a day is about 4,000 milligrams. So to get even close to that limit just from this cheese, you'd have to eat, wait for it, about 111 slices in one day. Suddenly, the idea that a single slice is dangerous just sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?
So what's the real takeaway here? Well, it's not actually about the cheese. It's about how easily bad information can catch fire and spread, especially when it taps into our fears about health and looks vaguely scientific. This whole thing is a perfect case study in why critical thinking is such an essential skill for navigating the world today. So, What can you do the next time you see a scary claim like this? Well, here are a few red flags to always watch out for. First, just ask yourself, does the basic math even make sense? Does it seem physically possible? Pay really close attention to the units they're using. And most importantly, if you see an extraordinary claim, especially from a dramatic TV show instead of a real scientific study, you should be extra skeptical.
This whole cheese story is such a great reminder to always ask questions, to check the source, and to see if the claims actually add up. And it leaves us with one last really important question to think about. What other health facts that we all take for granted might completely fall apart if we just took a moment to look at them with the same critical eye?